Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Alice Newa. Please feel free to like, comment, share and subscribe. Okay, so today's video is just about teaching English in Taiwan, especially for beginners. So I made a video about how you can teach English in Taiwan, so you can go check it out. But this video is different in terms of like the things you really need to know about teaching in Taiwan. So this is basically about like the culture and attitudes. So it's a bit different from the previous video I made. The previous video I made is about requirements and all the technicalities, but this one is on the culture side of things. So I think before you come to Taiwan or any country abroad, especially Asia, I think it's a good idea for you to watch this video. Okay, let's get into it. Okay, so first things first, you have to realize that teaching someone a second language is not easy. This is a second language to them. It's not easy, okay? So before you start teaching, you don't realize how fast you talk, how much of an accent you have, and how many rules the English language actually imposes. So if you have been speaking English all your life, you might just know what sounds right and what doesn't sound right. So even if you learned the actual rules in school, you might forget them. So it's important when you start teaching, it's important to keep up, okay? So you also have to keep learning. You have to keep learning, you have to remind yourself of the rules, and you have to be up to date, let me say that, because students will ask you why a lot, and you have to be able to explain that. And sometimes you have to slow yourself down, and sometimes you have to tone down your accent if need be. So you might find that some students might not understand some words that they know, but maybe it's because of the way you speak. So you might be too fast, or your accent might be heavy. So there are many reasons. There are many reasons why you might have issues in the classroom. But there are things you can work on and should work on, okay? So that was the first point. Okay, so another thing is that your own English is gonna get worse. Yeah, it's gonna get worse. You're not in an environment where your English is gonna get better. No, it's gonna get worse. Because let's say you're teaching beginners, you have to realize that you talk very fast to them. Even if you are slow in your country, to them, they might find that you talk very fast. So when you're talking to beginners, you have to slow yourself way down. Slow yourself down, okay? This is very necessary for the students to comprehend what you're saying. So instead of saying table, you have to say table, so that they can understand you, especially the younger students, okay? So you have to use a lot of body language, use a lot of gestures, pointing, miming. Like there's so many things you have to do, but they help. They're gonna help the students a lot more. And that's gonna affect your own English ability. And by that, I'm not saying you're gonna get bad, but you might not use advanced vocabulary. Let me say that, yeah, because you have to match the students at the level that they are. So your own English is gonna get worse. Be prepared for that. You are teaching out of your comfort zone, so you have to give yourself grace, okay? When you teach abroad, more than likely you are in a totally new environment. So everything is different than what you are accustomed to. And teaching in a new country brings in or brings on some emotional discomfort, okay? Maybe it could be because of culture shock, you know, or maybe behavior differences. Even some minor changes, they will bring a lot of discomfort to you, especially emotionally. So when you move to another country, you have to prepare for the fact that not only are the students different, the laws are different, the culture is different, even the culture of education is different. In some countries, you're going to find that yelling at the students is okay. It doesn't mean you have to do it, but you might find that it's okay, and that might shock you, but it's something you need to accept for what it is. And you have to give yourself grace, because you have to realize that it gets better with time. So with time, it's gonna get better. You are also gonna get better. To add on to this is that good intentions don't really mean good results, okay? So you might have good intentions. You might introduce something that maybe was done in your country and it helped you, and then you find that it doesn't work. So despite your good intentions, you find that you might still negatively affect the students or your colleagues or something, because in the beginning you are kind of naive, right? You're a bit naive, let's be honest, and that's fine. It happens. So you have to know that and accept it and move. Okay, take the L and move. Okay. Some schools can be very business minded, especially cram schools, also known as bushibans in Taiwan and maybe China. So they have an agenda, and the agenda is to make money. So when parents are paying a school to educate their kids, they need to have good results, like top-notch results, right? So it's a competition among these schools to stay afloat. So they'll do whatever they can to bring in the money. So what you have to do is to just go with the flow and realize that you need to adapt to new cultural norms. So regardless of where you work, you have to be adaptive. That's something you need to know. Some schools are parent over student focused. As I said, some of these schools are businesses more than anything. So that means a lot of things will be done to please the parents, even though they might not be in the best interest of the child. So not all schools, obviously, but some schools. So most parents will care about the grades, obviously, and they might not care as much about the child's abilities. They're going to care about the grades. So if the grades are not good, they might take their child to another school thinking maybe it's the teacher or the school that's the issue. So they should try another school. So you find that for schools to stay afloat, some naughty students will be given more grace than they deserve. Some students will get better grades than they deserve. And some students will be promoted to a higher class, even when you know that they're not suitable for that class. So a lot is done to please the parents. So in Asia, parents are more involved in their children's education more than other parts of the world, okay? Which is a good thing, actually. It's a good thing. So you might also find yourself in situations where the parents are supervising you directly, and they'll give you teaching feedback or they'll give the school feedback. So yeah, it's very parent focused, teaching in Asia and especially Taiwan, maybe China too. You'll find that in Korea, I heard that too, you'll find that it's very parent focused. They just want to please the parents. It's not up to you to make changes in how things are done. As a foreigner in a different country, you're going to learn quickly that most things are done differently than what you're used to. So at some point, you may find yourself thinking, my goodness, this would be more efficient if we did it this way or we did this way. You find that in Korea, I heard that too, you'll find that it's very parent focused. They just want to please the parents. It's not up to you to make changes in how things are done. As a foreigner in a different country, you're going to learn quickly that most things are done differently than what you're used to. So at some point, you may find yourself thinking, my goodness, this would be more efficient if we did it this way or we did this way instead of that way. So you're going to have a lot of such thoughts. And whether your solution is right or wrong, it's really not up to you to make changes. So think of it this way. You've been living in your country, you've done things a certain way at your job, for example, and then someone comes in from a different country even, and then they decide to change things. You wouldn't like it, right? So it's the same thing. It's the same concept. And there are many differences that come to play. Sometimes it's cultural nuances, right? So sometimes you might not even know that you're being offensive because you don't know the culture, right? So it's sometimes you're also going through culture shock yourself. So you're hyper aware of differences. And maybe you need something you can be able to control. So you might try to change something and say, I think this is better. But just know that it's not up to you to change it. They've probably done it for years and years and years. And they're not looking for change because to them, it's not broken, okay? So it's not up to you. You just need to adapt. Just adapt. You have to remember that your students are learning in a different environment than you did back home. And that's something you have to understand. Of course, this changes from country to country, school to school. In Taiwan, I found that students tend to be more tired than what you expect of kids. And at first I would be like, why are you so tired? Like, you're 6 years old, you know? So you could find that someone is 6 years old, like a little kid, but it's 1 p.m. they're dozing in class. And it's not because they're bored, even if the class is fun, they're just tired, okay? And it could be because they slept late and they have school, they have homework, they have other cram schools. So they have a lot of things to do. Like, these kids are busy. These kids are busy, so they might be tired in the classroom. So instead of just punishing things, sometimes just be more understanding. Ask them to wash their face, stand up, maybe ask them to participate more in the games. Just do something to wake them up. That's just an example. There are many factors that come to play, but you have to understand that this is a different environment. For example, for me, when I was young, I would go to bed at like 7 p.m. By the time it's 8 or whatever, I'm asleep. So during the day, I'm very energized, right? But kids here sometimes sleep at midnight, and then they wake up maybe at 6 a.m. So it's just different. It's different. People with better credentials will get paid more, and that makes sense. So you have to work on your credentials. But also what helps is that if you have blonde hair and blue eyes, chances are higher that you might get paid more and you might not have issues finding a job, okay? So if you are like white, you are under 35, so you're young and you're not hideous, okay? You don't look bad. You're going to have no issues finding a job, okay? So it's very controversial, let me say that. But then I'm gonna say, especially in Taiwan, I don't know about other countries, but in Taiwan, I would say I've seen a surge of more teachers with color. So like teachers from Africa, or like teachers with darker skin, let me say that. So it's like they're moving away from a teacher has to be white, a teacher has to be white. They're slowly moving away from that. So now they focus more on your credentials and your skill and how you relate to the kids. So your skin color is gonna matter for some schools, and some schools it's not gonna matter. Actually, the country where you come from also matters. So for example, Americans actually, they have a higher chance to get a job. If you're from New Zealand, if you're from the UK, South Africa, you have a higher chance of getting a job than someone from, I'm not gonna say the countries. But yeah, so where you come from also matters. But I would say you still need to try your luck if you haven't applied for a job. Your manager is going to be quite traditional for the most part. Not all schools, but some schools are like that. So in Asia, they have like, not all countries obviously, but there's a certain approach to management. In simpler terms, I call it micromanagement, okay? So they try to control every little thing you say or do within the classroom. So they believe that obviously they've done it longer, right? So you might find that they might insist for you to do certain things, even though you think maybe this is not quite helpful. Like, this doesn't really help the students, right? But you still have to do it. And just remember not to take it personal. Just accept what they want you to do, even though you might not agree with it. But management might insist that you follow it. So that's what you have to do. Just follow. Knowing the language of the country can be quite important when teaching abroad. So stay with me here, okay? You can move abroad and not learn the language and be fine. But I recommend at least conversational level for you to just know a little bit. At least just know some of the basic rules of the language. Okay, I'm gonna give an example because I've seen this mistake being made by most of my students, right? And I understand it because I know some basic Chinese rules. So for example, in Mandarin, there's a word called yo, which means to have, and there to be. But most people and most students are going to translate it as to have, right? And in their language, it's okay. I'm gonna try to say there is an exam today. There is an exam today. In that sentence, in English, that's fine, right? But they might say today have an exam, or today have exam. So you might not understand why they're saying that, but that's because in Chinese that sentence structure is okay. So in Chinese they can say 今天有考试. I hope I'm not breaking it. Which means today has a test. In Chinese that's okay, but in English we don't say today has a test, because today doesn't write test. Okay, so you can say there is a test today, or we have a test today. So it's better if you explain that to the students, and the best way to explain it is for you to actually know. Okay, because you might find that they're making the same mistake and you don't know why, and to them it's not wrong. They might not know that it's wrong because in their language it does exist. Okay, so there's a lot of focus on memorization and quizzes. So you find that most schools only care about memorizing vocabulary and quizzes. So the students have to write quizzes almost every day or every week, and then the kids memorize for a quiz. After the quiz they forget, especially because they also don't live in an English environment. So even if they learn a word, they might not use it ever in real life. So it might be a bit of an issue, but it's something you need to know. So sometimes you might feel like, I taught this word to the students already. They used it in the exam. How come they don't use it in real life? That might happen a lot, but it's because they're memorizing a lot of words, and then they just forget them, which is actually normal. It happens. So that's something you need to be aware of so it doesn't frustrate you. Okay, another point is that when you live in a foreign country, especially when you're working there, you need to know how taxes work. Okay, just don't leave it to your boss, don't leave it to somebody else. You have to understand how taxes work. Yeah, that ends there. Otherwise you might find yourself in trouble. So make sure you're on top of it. Just know how taxes work. You're filing your taxes, you're doing everything that needs to be done.